Hey guys, it's me again. It's been a really long time since I posted a video, and for reasons that I'll probably go over later, just really stupid stuff. But I do have other videos that I've made that I actually made like 10 months ago. With the ruckus, and I'm trying to. One of the problems is I had a really bad computer, and I paid like $300 at Walmart, and in the last video that I uploaded, it took like a whole day just to upload a video that was really short. So I'm in the process of getting a new computer, a really good one, so I can upload more frequently. I've come across a new project that I'm making, and it has nothing to do with drift trikes or the ruckus. I'm making a coffee table. I went up to the mountain and I got this piece of juniper, which I thought was pretty cool. So I'm first thing I got to do, and I have some stuff on order. It's a resin they use for like bar tops. It's really thick, so you could add stuff to it. And I have some other stuff on order that I'm going to use with this. I have already made a coffee table before with this type of wood, but I wanted to incorporate some of that resin. And so what I got to do now is I got to cut this piece here down the middle with the chainsaw, and then just figure out what parts I want to keep, because I don't want it to be this big. I'm probably going to end up cutting off like this part, like right here somewhere, because I don't want it, of course, that big. It's about length, I would say about 8 feet long. There's some pieces that I really want to keep, and then there's some parts that I know I just can't. So I'm going to cut it off in half with the chainsaw, and then use a plane or a power planer to flatten like this side right here, and then use a belt sander to flatten the top. And then I'm going to use probably part of this cut off part right here for the legs, and this piece right here, that was a part that I cut off of it as well. And so I'm going to start this, and I will be back with the piece that I need to cut, or the piece that's already been cut. Okay, so I cut off the pieces that I wanted from it. So I was left over with a couple of pieces like that, and I want to get a flat surface. So I used the chainsaw, and I've made a bunch of little cuts here, and then we'll just go ahead and knock these off with a hammer or whatever. Some of them just pop off, and then after that, I'm going to go ahead and flatten it out with that planer right there, and then see how that goes. If I got to take it down more, I still got quite a bit of material on there. I'll just go ahead and cut down a little bit more. I do want to leave this part right here that attaches to this gnarled up piece right there. I also want to leave this right here, and I'll kind of form it a little bit more right here on this side, and then round over these rough edges. I kind of want to keep this area right here looking the way it is. I'll sand it and smooth it out, and then stain it and put that finish on it. But I do need a flat spot, of course, for a coffee table. So this is how I'm starting off, and we'll go from there, see what happens. So this is where we're at now. After I cut the slits all the way down the top and made it more or less even, I used the planer to flatten it out and kind of shape it, in certain areas. This unfinished end, I still gotta kind of contour it, and then after that, I used this very dangerous machine to basically strip off all of the bark and all of the loose wood that's in these crevices, because with that going to pour it into these cracks that'll kind of soak in and fill in everything. And on the end, I'm going to have to figure out a way to seal it so that way the resin doesn't pour through. Still got to figure that out. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. I'm thinking I'm going to flatten it just a little bit more in this area. I wanted to kind of keep it round going up to right here, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and flatten it out a little bit more so there's more of an area to, you know, put drinks or whatever. And I did leave this area right here, you know, kind of gnarled up, and I did strip it for the mark. I will probably contour just a little bit more with some sandpaper or an attachment on the angle grinder. This right here, this end part, I'm going to see if I can make it look a little bit better, as well as right here. And then this back piece right there. Otherwise, it's coming out pretty nice. Alright, so this is where we're stopping right now, at least for today. It's all sanded on the top, smoothed out, flattened it out in these areas, kind of contoured this back edge. This area right here is going to be a problem, I think, because there used to be a piece inside there, and when I was sanding it, it just got loose and fell out. It's going to take a lot of resin to fill that in, so I don't know how that's going to work out. What else? Oh yeah, I sanded these edges right here, contoured them just a little bit more. They're still rough. I got to go through it with some finer grit sandpaper. This area right here, I'm not sure about it. I don't know. I'm just kind of wondering if I should just cut it right here. I don't know. I might just leave it. Who knows? Other than that, I gotta wait for the resin and the other stuff that I ordered to fill in the cracks and crevices. That should be in next week, and so next weekend I can do the first layer of filling in all this stuff, figure out what I'm going to do right here. I don't know, we shall see. Anyways, here we are, and hopefully I'll have this done in a couple of weeks, because I can only work on it on Sundays for a couple hours at a time, because I work the rest of the week. So hopefully I'll get this done and it will look pretty nice, hopefully. Alright, so I moved this indoors because it's really cold outside. It's like in the 30s right now, and it's about noon. But I needed some way to fill in all of these huge cracks and holes and whatnot, because when I pour the resin inside, it's going to, of course, leak all over the place. So I used an oil-based sculpting clay, and I've had to heat it up with this torch because it's so hard to work with. But so far I've gotten all the bottom area right here done. There was a huge hole right here. Filled that in. Hopefully this is all going to hold it in. I still need to get this side piece in. I think I'm just going to do like a flat piece and cover it there, and then put a piece of wood and screw it in so it doesn't, gives it a little bit more support. There is a pretty large crack that kind of goes all the way down here that I'm going to have to fill in. I hope I have enough of this. I think I will, but it's already taken me a couple hours just to kind of, just because the clay is so cold and hard to work with. But you know, I'm getting it done. Hopefully it'll seal up all the cracks. And what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to heat it up with the torch again, kind of blend in all the edges. That way there's no way the weight from the resin is going to push through. And also I have a large foam mat that I'm going to set the piece of wood on, so hopefully the foam will kind of push in, you know, to all these areas, so it doesn't, it kind of gives it a little bit more support. But I'm going to continue to go ahead and filling in all these cracks, and I think I just need to go up to like right here, and maybe fill in like this guy, that guy. I'm not sure if they go all the way through, but you know, just to be safe, because I don't want to pour all of this resin in and have it leak all over the place. So let's see what happens. So I think this might do it, hopefully. We shall see. I put the clay in this area. This made this pocket. I'm going to put a small piece of wood around here to give it a little bit more support, so the weight from the resin doesn't push this out. Also, I got the resin in this stuff here. I got on eBay for like 80 bucks. It's 2 gallons. I got some extra stuff at Lowe's, this stuff here, which was like $70 for 1 gallon, so it's a little bit more cost effective to get this stuff. I did order some, like a additive to put in the resin. I wanted to make it look like a pearlescent blue color inside the resin, and it's been like 2 weeks and it still hasn't showed up. So I had an idea, and hopefully it works. I went to the dollar store, where everything's $1, and got, you know, some measuring cups, and I bought 10 of these nail polish bottles with a pearlescent blue color that I'll mix into the epoxy resin, and then let's see if it works. Hopefully it does. Hopefully it'll be able to harden inside the resin, but we shall see. I'm going to go ahead and put on that board on the end of that piece of wood, and then I will mix up the first batch. Well, I would say that this is somewhat of a fail. Basically what's happening here is you can see that it's just leaking like a sieve down all the way down through here, and I've tried to kind of, you know, fill in the holes, but it's just coming out so, you know, like in this area, especially this one right here, it's filled up to this point, and I've used almost those whole 2 gallons. You know, I would fill it in. I've used all of that that nail polish, and so I didn't have enough of that. I should have bought, you know, I don't know how many more bottles, bought like 6 or maybe even 10 more. And I've filled in, this one seems to have filled in pretty good, but like right here it kind of drops in there and it doesn't fill up. This one here too, I've tried to fill in, and I've put a bunch of it in there, and there's some sort of a void in there that it's just really soaking up all that stuff. And right here is the main problem. I think, oh, and another thing I did is I had put in some of these, this stone that I have here inside, to kind of help fill in some of the gaps. And I think what I'm gonna do is just let it sit overnight, and let it harden, and hopefully that'll fill in the gap, so it stops, you know, pushing through, because it's going pretty quick inside there. I'm not sure there's nothing else I can do other than just wait for it to stop, harden up inside that crack, and then go back, sand it, and then fill in some, pour in some more of the resin. I might have to grab probably another gallon of it, just to, once I finish sanding all this, I could fill in this part again, right here, and then I still gotta sand this area, and then I'm still undecided on this area if I want to keep it or not. I mean, it looks really cool, and I think it would look nice once it's finished, with a clear coat or something over it. But other than that, I'm still undecided on this little part right here, and I might end up just using a spray lacquer, finish, a high gloss lacquer finish over it, to instead of using the resin, because it's the last table I did I used that spray lacquer finish on there, and it came out just fine. But this one, it's just, even right now as I'm looking right there, it's gone down just a little bit, and I can see little bubbles kind of popping up everywhere, which means it's getting sucked in somewhere. So I'm just going to leave it, and I'm not going to put any more of the resin inside there. Just let it harden up, come back, sand it again, and then see if I could either plug up the rest of the holes, or hopefully the resin, when it hardens, will fill in all of those other holes that it's leaking through, and then I can just finish up, go over it again. I'll have to rough it, make it a little bit rough so it'll stick on, the next layer will stick on to there, and that's, but like I say, I'm done for today. We'll see what happens after this hardens up. Alright, so it is the following day. It did harden up, and it did end up plugging up all of those holes, although because of the nature of the wood and how I am leaving it basically unfinished, or not unfinished, but raw, underneath. I mean, what I'm going to do is end up putting a clear coat under it anyways, but because of the openings and the splits and whatnot, the orifices that the resin can go through, I did go through the whole 2 gallons just to fill in everything. This area, which had the biggest void, did end up filling up down at the bottom, and I was able to fill up the rest of the way with resin and the nail polish, which in fact did work. The nail polish, I had a question about that, and it did harden up with the resin. It looks really good in the sun or direct light, because the pearlescent pigment inside the nail polish shines through really well. So this is the last coat as far as filling in all of the crevices with the resin, and I just poured the last of it. I've put a couple of little barriers here because I can see that it's kind of dripping down in this way, so I don't want it to kind of go under, so I put some more clay. The clay ended up working pretty good. The only problem that I saw was when you mix the 2 parts, the resin together, part A and part B, the chemical reaction creates heat, and it actually softened up the clay in some areas, and it started to leak through those areas. But by the time that chemical reaction had taken place, it had started to harden. So it actually sealed up all of the holes where it was dripping through underneath, like right here, and down here in some areas. That filled in a lot of holes, and there are some major voids inside the log, and that's why I think I went through so much of the resin, I mean, some did get wasted when it spilled underneath, but it actually came through here, through the middle of this log. So there's a hole that went through all the way down the middle, and it filled in all the holes on the inside, so which is a good thing, I guess. So the last thing is I'm going to let this harden up tonight again, see how it looks in the morning. I am going to use a torch to get rid of some of these little air bubbles that are right here and right there. And basically what you do is you just grab a torch or a heat gun, depending on what you have, but the torch works just fine. You can see, if you just go over it, just kind of touch it, it gets rid of all of the little pinholes and all of the little bubbles. So that's, I'll wait a couple of minutes for it to harden up a little bit more, and then I will do that again, and then just leave it for the night, and hopefully air bubbles won't appear overnight and I'll have to fill them in. I mean, I'm going to have to sand this down quite a bit, because I mean, you could see right here that there is a lip that I'm going to have to sand down, and it's not much, maybe about a 1/16 of an inch or something like that. So, but that'll, you know, help smooth out all of this area and right here, and make it a little bit more flat, you know, for a table. In this areas right here, I debated on whether or not I should fill these in as well, and I think that I'm going to leave it just like that, and then just kind of clean it up inside, because I know there's some stuff, I don't know if you could see it, but there's some stuff inside. Clean it up a little bit more like I'm doing right here. I have decided that I'm going to clean this area up a little bit more and keep it down over here in the bottom. I got to take care of stuff like this, and then like down here, smooth it out a little bit more, and then once it's completely hardened, I'll flip it over. I've already started to kind of take off some of the clay. I'll just use a wire brush and take off the rest. So hopefully tomorrow this will look pretty nice. And I still got to get the pieces for the legs, which I do have already. I just got to strip them, sand them, and see how well they're gonna. And I'm gonna have to figure out what kind of height I need on this coffee table. Anywhere from about 14 to 20, I think 22 inches. I've seen coffee tables. The one I have now is at about 22, which is fine. And I might keep it at that height, but we'll see. And see how, you know, the legs look anyway. So, but yeah, there are a couple of pointers on this stuff. Is yeah, you don't have to go super expensive on the pigments as far as additions to the resin. Like I said, I just went to the dollar store. I paid $1 for each bottle, and they had about, you know, 20 different colors that you can choose from. I went with the blue, and you know, I ended up getting like 6 more bottles just in case I needed them. And so overall I used 13 bottles of nail polish, but that was, you know, with the whole 2 gallons of resin. So you probably won't need that much if you have, either the cracks aren't, you know, as wide as this, and you don't have anything to fill in as deep. So you know, you probably get away with maybe even 6 bottles, you know, so that's still not too bad. The most expensive part that I saw was, or I bought, was the resin, the 2 gallons, which was like $79, which is actually isn't a very expensive price, because I went to Lowe's and I bought a 1 gallon kit, and that was $69. So, you know, That's a little bit cheaper if you get it off eBay. We'll check this out tomorrow morning and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so fast forward a couple of days later. I ended up filling in the rest of that area that leaked out and let it dry for a couple of days. I sanded it all down with a 50 grit belt sander, and then went to a 120 and then to 200, and then shaped it a little bit more underneath. On the side, sanded it flat, and up in this area I decided to keep that, but sanded it down a little bit more with the wire brush. And then on this area, sanded it a little bit more as well on both sides, and sanded it here on the flats, and used a wire brush wheel as well to smooth out the edges. I went ahead and put a coat of stain on there, and just to bring out the grain. It was a light stain. It was called Cherry 235, and then wiped it down with cloth, and underneath where the clay was kind of a pain in the butt to get out of all the crevices. But I took out most of the bigger chunks and then used the wire brush on the angle grinder to remove the rest, and that seemed to work pretty good. And it's kind of cold in here, so it wasn't soft, it was kind of hard, the clay at least, and that pulled off pretty much all of the clay. There's some areas in here that I had to heat it back up with a torch, and then used a soft bristle brush to kind of take off the rest. But other than that, it looks pretty good. I've already mixed up the resin that I'm going to put over this, so I'm going to kind of level out the table itself because it's kind of leaning this way, and then pour it over, brush it in these areas, and brush it in over here, down on the bottom here. Hopefully it won't drip too much. It's like I say, it's still kind of cold in here, so the resin itself is kind of thick. And then I'll let that dry overnight and see how that comes out. So here it is. Put the glaze coat on there, spread it out with a putty knife, and then with a brush kind of brushed in the crevices, especially right here and under here as well. And then I let it sit for a little bit, and then went over it with a torch to get rid of a lot of the air bubbles that were in there. I'm gonna have to go over it one more time, because I can see, like right here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's some small air bubbles developing right there. You can still, I don't know if the light is good, but you can still kind of see, yeah, there you go, the stones that I inlaid inside there, as well as the pearl finish. It's still a little opaque, so you can kind of see through it still, which is what I was going for. And so I'm going to let it sit for a little bit, and then go over it with the propane torch just to get rid of some of the air bubbles. And hopefully by tomorrow it will have set, and I can start on the legs. Alrighty, so fast forward a couple of days, 2-3 days actually. I poured the resin over the top, and it stayed pretty nice. There's a couple of little tiny areas that where some air bubbles developed after, but they're not too bad. Overall, I think it came out pretty nice. Right now I am working on the base, and I didn't record a lot of what I did, but here's part of that base, or the base actually. But I've been fitting this area right here, which has a kind of a dowel built in to this cross brace, and then drilled a hole into there. And same thing in here, but it has to recess a little bit in this area, so I've been using the die grinder to cut out the recess, and then I'll sand it smooth. All I gotta do is finish sanding it a little bit, because there's some little sharp areas still. Right here, as you can see, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's kind of at an angle, kind of like this. I'm gonna have to probably sand it flat a little bit on the top. But that's no problem. This one stayed pretty flat. I measured it to where there was about 22 inches in between the two pieces, and I think that's going to work for supporting the top. The thicker part's going to go right here, which is a little bit lower, and about 1.5 inches, I believe, and then this is the other end. I won't be able to try it until I get it upside down, the top, and what I'm thinking of doing is drilling a hole through the top here and putting a dowel and one through here, and then doing the same holes, you know, on the bottom side of there, and then just sliding it into the top part and gluing it in place, and hopefully that'll be strong enough to hold that. All right, there are the legs, or the base, all sanded and stained, and put a couple of coats of shellac on there, and ended up putting some, you know, you can see that inlay in here as well, and I just used the 5-minute epoxy with some of this, which is powdered pigment, sapphire blue. It's a pearl pigment, and I had ordered that like 3 weeks ago, and it took forever to come in. It finally came in, but I had already used the nail polish, and which worked out fine. I mean, you could do it either way, and I ended up attaching these with some, you know, drilled some holes in there, and then on the other side ran a long screw with some 5-minute epoxy inside the hole, and that seemed to hold it really well. Yeah, this was quite an experience. I just got to let it dry, and then I can take it home. And I would say in all I spent about $150 in materials. And I still have like 3/4 of a bottle of this stuff, which I had used for the top, and then I'd used the 2 gallons to fill in all this area. But you know, using the clay method, I don't know how else you would do it, you know, with something like this. You know, I thought maybe if you used some of that flex seal, do I have some here? Let's see. Yeah, if you use some of this stuff, you know, I think they have clear. Spray that down on the bottom, give it like 3 or 4 coats, and try and seal all the holes up. But I don't know. I've seen it work on, you know, smaller cracks, but cracks this big, I don't know. Like I say, the clay method did work to an extent, and it worked really good for this purpose. So, you know, the only drawback about having something like this is when you go to dust it. Just get yourself a can of compressed air and just blow off all the dust, I guess, because to try and get anything inside all these little crevices is going to be a pain, but it looks really nice. If you have any questions, I guess you can just leave something in the comments. Please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and post up some pictures. Follow me on Instagram at J_VIDA, and I got a bunch of pictures that I'm going to post up on this as well. Thanks for watching.